He's got one foot in the frying pan and one in the pressure cooker. Believe me, as a bowler, I know that right about now, your bladder feels like an overstuffed vacuum cleaner bag, and your butt is kind of like an about to explode bratwurst.
Hey, you mind? I wasn't talking when you were bowling.
Was I talking out loud?
Welcome to Munsons at the Movies. My name is Kyle. I'll once again be your host. Joined by the rest of the Munsons. Want to give them a wide berth.
What is called a born loser. A real Munson.
And talk a little bit about what's going on in their worlds. This time, we would normally start with Aubrey, but he is on vacation this week doing family things. I think he just really hated F. Murray Abraham and just didn't want to come. He kind of had some inside knowledge on what the wheel was doing. He's like, all right, I mean, let's plan a vacation. That's my theory, though. It's working theory.
Yeah, I think it may even be a residual depression from the end of his basketball season, maybe. I don't know. Maybe he needed more time to grieve. I don't know.
All right, well, speaking of degenerate gamblers, how about you, Case?
I'm fired up about something. As many of you guys know, I'm a huge advocate for female athletics and sports, and I am thrilled that women's basketball right now almost feels more interesting to watch than men's basketball. I cannot wait for the women's Division I national tourney.
Caitlin Clark's electric.
Yeah.
She's unbelievable. And then, did you guys know that South Carolina and LSU, they don't like playing each other? Did you know that? I mean, honestly, you don't like to see the fighting, but I think it's good for basketball to have great rivalries like that. So let's go. March Madness is different for me this year.
That fight further solidified why we can't have sanctioned fighting in basketball as we do in hockey.
Yes.
Because while there are some giants in hockey, there is an average height and size disparity in basketball that's not the average in hockey. And the center for, was it South Carolina?
Oh, yeah.
Was just dropping chicks left and right. And that's why we're not allowed to have fighting in basketball, because the giant just beats everyone to death.
Even the guy that came out of the stands got scared once he was toe-to-toe.
I think it was his sister who got tossed, and he ran down on the court. And then once he got toe-to-toe, he's like, never mind, I'm fine. Yeah, I don't want to do this.
I do have a real hot take I do want on record. I think Dawn Staley will be the first female coach in the NBA.
Head coach.
I think she's an incredible coach, and I think she's going to be the first female head coach in the NBA.
All right, well, let's bounce it over to James.
My favorite football team's QB is currently being rumored to be a potential candidate for vice president, so I got that going for me. I need him to play more, so it justifies the nonsense I have to respond to as a Jets fan. It's just not worth it at the moment. We need to keep sports out of politics, so I don't think he should run.
Did he play 4 snaps last year?
Yeah.
It's amazing how much we talk about Aaron Rodgers with the limited amount of football he played for the New York Jets last year.
It's not worth it, but I'll take that back if he becomes vice president, because I do feel like that will positively impact his on-the-field performance. I feel like there'll be Secret Service and a whole deal. I feel like that'll help.
You're going to get sacked.
You got the best offensive line in football at that point, because the offensive linemen have guns. I don't care. Myles Garrett's not getting through that line. Not going to happen.
You think Myles Garrett right now could tackle Kamala Harris? No chance. No chance.
Well, speaking of sports, as a Red Wings fan, about the time we recorded our last episode, we were really excited because Patrick Kane had just left Chicago and scored a game-winning goal in overtime, yelling "Showtime" to the crowd, and the Wings were firmly in the 7th spot in the playoffs, and now they've lost 6 games in a row. Got embarrassed by the Panthers, embarrassed by the Avalanche, and it's just they were fighting each other in practice today, so that was really fun. The excitement of being a Red Wings fan is quickly diminished, and I'm back into sadness and not lack of prosperity like James normally is.
Case, in your coaching opinion, after 6 straight losses, is fighting in practice a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a good thing.
I was going to say it could be a good thing.
That's what we were saying.
At least we know they don't completely not care.
That's fair. They just don't even show up to practice.
Yes.
We're excited to bring back one of our favorite guests, Mike Van De Voort. Mike is a professional marketer and communicator by day, but actor and sports announcer by night. Performing since he was old enough to talk, he is currently one of the actors and producers creating shows for Kevin Pollak's Zooming the Movies on Facebook. For Zooming the Movies, he's played icons such as Uncle Buck, Freddy Krueger, and Scooby-Doo, among many, many others. He's also lent his voice to numerous NCAA and minor league sports programs over the last 15 years, and he was previously with us for the Anthony Mackie and Gina Davis episodes. Speaking of athleticism in women's sports, go listen to that episode to hear us talk about A League of Their Own, one of his favorite movies. So welcome back, Mike. How we doing?
Things are going well. We're producing some stuff. We're actually not doing as much stuff in our Zooming the Movies group, but we're kind of, you split your time. So we have a new one that's called Scripts and Friends. You can find on Facebook. Currently doing some fun stuff over there. It's good to be back. Things are going good, and I'm also planning a wedding because I'm getting married in November.
Congratulations.
Ooh, all right, man.
That's also a thing that's happening. So it's a lot. But as someone who runs events for a day job, it's feels like work sometimes, but at the same time, it's also kind of fun.
That's awesome, man. Congrats.
Always glad to have you, man. We're kind of leaning on you heavy. We're down in person, so no pressure.
I'm here, man.
We need you to carry a little bit. All right, birthday is March 21st. We've got some goodies. All right, so first and foremost, we have Gary Oldman, or Gary Oldman as he's more likely known. Known for many iconic roles, including The Dark Knight, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Darkest Hour, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Mank, Leon the Professional, one we covered relatively recently, Fifth Element, and every film with the bad guy. I don't know if you knew that, but every film with the bad guy is Gary Oldman. How old is Gary?
63.
Ooh, that's a good guess. I was going lower. I was going to say 59.
Let's go 68.
Well, we're going to give this one to James because he's turning 66.
Damn it.
On March 21st.
Jeopardy rules suck.
Next up, we've got a former Munson, Matthew Broderick. Known for The Producers, War Games, The Cable Guy, Ferris Bueller, Inspector Gadget, Cable Guy, and Lion King. How old is Matthew Broderick?
Ugh, that sucks. You threw an Inspector Gadget.
Also killed a family in Ireland.
Come on.
Lest people forget.
Oof.
That'll age you. So that, you might have to take a couple years off.
I think they're close in age.
Him and Old Man, you think are close in age?
65, a year younger. That's my guess.
60.
Ferris Bueller was 40 years ago now. He was in his early 20s when they made that. So I'm going to do it. I'll go 66.
Oh, man, you had it.
If I went the other direction, I would have been right.
You went off the trail. We're going to give this one to Case. Broderick's turning 62.
Ooh.
That's what you were early 20s 40 years ago. I was like, do the math. Do it, Mike. Do it.
I love Jeopardy rules.
You love it this time? Yeah, there you go. All right. An actor who I can say with confidence, and I don't think it's spoiling anything, is considerably younger than the other two. That is Scott Eastwood, son of Clint, one of them. Known for Suicide Squad, Fate of the Furious, Pacific Rim Uprising, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Fury, and Flags of Our Fathers. How old is Scotty?
39.
37.
42.
Boys, everybody wins today. Mike gets it. He's turning 38. Everybody got a W.
Nice.
I'm proud of us.
I was close.
You were.
Clint Eastwood's Twitter, now I guess X account, is one of my favorite follows at the moment because it is clearly not ran by him, but it is clearly approved by him because the posts are just horrific pictures of him doing famous people stuff. So it's hey, here's this really, really old man eating lunch after filming so-and-so. It's why would this ever be posted? No one needs to see what this is. And it's oh, clearly he's you're not posting without my approval. And it's if you gave your grandpa a Twitter account.
I was about to say, I didn't realize that 92-year-olds could use Twitter.
Happy birthday to them and anybody else who has a birthday that day. And notice we didn't have any dead people this time. So back to normality.
Good work.
Here we are.
Well, we got a 2-week buffer before we can confirm that.
That's true. Sorry ahead of time if someone perishes in the next 8 days and doesn't make it to March 21st. This episode 98, and we had 5 actors we threw onto the wheel. They were Roger Barth, Ed Harris, Cole Meany, and Emma Stone, who just won an Oscar for Best Actress, but it doesn't matter because the wheel selected F. Murray Abraham. Murray has 133 credits on his resume, a mix of film, TV, and quite a bit of theater as well. We're here to dig in, and we're not going to talk about all 133, but we're going to get into quite a bit of it. The highlights, the lowlights, and anything in between that stuck out to us. So before we get into kind of a chronological deep dive in his career, we always start with the little actor trivia to see if James can stump us Fast and Furious style.
Mike, you're part of the initiated, but for those of you who are new listeners, I'm about to read 3 facts, 2 of which are going to be true about F. Murray Abraham. One of them is not going to be true about him, but is going to be true about one of the many illustrious cast members of the Fast and Furious franchise. The gentlemen here are going to have to guess which one is not true. Fact number 1, fought a thief backstage, thwarting an attempted robbery of a Broadway show during a public rehearsal. Fact number 2, struggled in high school and was drawn into gang culture of conflict and petty crime, which actually led to him being arrested 7 times for fighting, theft, and check fraud before he was eventually suspended. Fact number 3, he's the first person with ancestry from an Arab country to have received an Academy Award.
I'll go first. I'm going to go with fact 3 because everybody knows the Fast and Furious actor with Arab ancestry who won an Oscar is Luke Evans. Very clearly. Very obvious.
It's 1/8 Syrian. That's Luke Evans. So yeah, Kyle nailed it. Absolutely.
Can't judge a book by a cover, especially when we're talking ethnicities.
100%.
It's a PSA for all of our anti-DAI friends.
I'm going to go on a limb on this one and say that I think fact 1 is the lie, because that's actually about the birthday boy, Scott Eastwood.
Forgot that he's in those movies because I've actually used Scott Eastwood facts. Good call.
Damn it. Yeah, well, I lost.
Fate of the Furious. I did mention earlier.
Since we're doing it, I guess I'll take B in the middle. Mostly because I think that, process of elimination, I think that F. Murray Abraham is badass enough to stop a thief. Although, man, this gang thing he also sounds like a badass doing that, too. I'm going to go with that actually being true for Ludacris.
Luda.
Pulling Case's heartstrings.
That's a good guess as well. So I will start with fact number 3. So he's the first person with ancestry of an Arab country to receive an Academy Award. That's true. F. Murray Abraham's father immigrated from Syria, and his mother was a first-generation American with her parents immigrating from Italy. He is the first winner of Arab descent and one of only 2 people of Arab descent to win an Academy Award. Both were for Best Actor. We actually covered the other actor. Can you guys guess or remember who that was?
Rami Malek.
Yeah.
Oh, Kyle, you're amazing. Yeah, it was Rami Malek. Rami is 100% Egyptian. He won for Bohemian Rhapsody. And when you look it up, he is the first one that's claimed by a lot of sites. And I think it's because of the half Syrian, half Italian. But if you look at any interview with F. Murray Abraham, he very proudly embraces both cultures. And so he would be the first.
Cool.
Fact number 1, fought a thief backstage, thwarting an attempted robbery of a Broadway show during a public rehearsal. That is true. During a rehearsal reading of Much Ado About Nothing, an audience member managed to sneak into the dressing room and attempted to rob the actors that were on stage. 70-year-old F. Murray Abraham. So this isn't that long ago. Also in the audience, noticed the man heading backstage, which was odd since he's worked with the theater and knew that is not how you get out of the theater. So he alerted the house manager. They followed the man. And when they couldn't find him, they actually found him under a table in the dressing room. The house manager immediately shouted that there was a robbery underway and started calling the police. And Murray stepped in at 7 years old and fought the dude. And the dude ended up hitting him and running away. But he was only able to get away with Martha Plimpton's purse. So he essentially stopped him from robbing everyone else. He didn't need to go to the hospital or anything. He's like, no, I just need some ice. It's like, it's just weird that someone did that. I was like, damn, 7 years old. He's still getting in the mix like that. That's badass. I appreciate it.
Is he an Avenger? It's gotta.
I mean, if you're willing to scrap it, I'm not willing to scrap at 35. He's doing it at 70. I'm impressed.
Not all heroes wear capes.
Maybe it's tied to fact number 2, James. What do you think?
Fact number 2, was drawn into gang culture and was arrested 7 times before the age of 17. So I did this intentionally to be misleading because F. Murray himself was actually a gang member, and he would frequently cross the Mexican border from El Paso to Juarez as a young teenager. He would buy drugs, alcohol, and prostitutes, which eventually led him into a gang by the time he was 13. If you ask him about it, he's like, we would rob people, beat them up, we would steal cars. He's like, but like the actual like gangs would would let that happen because they were trying to recruit us. And so they were like, yeah, as long as you give us some money, AKA show us that you're worth being in our gang. It wasn't until he was in high school when he was 16. So it was about 3 or 4 years of doing this before a teacher introduced him to Shakespeare, pushed him to pursue acting. He found it incredibly fascinating and kind of as a way to escape. Started acting, won a scholarship through a state competition, and used it to go to college to pursue it full time. He actually credits this teacher with saving his life. However, he was never arrested like the fact stated, because the fact isn't about him. It's about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who famously plays Luke Hobbs in Fast 5, 6, 7, The Fate of the Furious, and Hobbs and Shaw. He was in a gang when he was younger. He was arrested 7 times before football got him on the straight and path.
Fantastic bait and switch, because I knew about his gang background. So good job, James.
When he talks about it, he speaks so glowingly of El Paso and of Juarez, Mexico. And he goes, with the exception of me being in gangs. He's like, the rest of it, he's like, I loved both of those places. He's like, but I was not doing good things at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Was the teacher that he had Michelle Pfeiffer?
I think Michelle Pfeiffer wasn't born yet at this time.
I didn't know Dangerous Minds was the F. Murray Abraham story.
Now, see what Case does? He finds his Easter eggs early on in the research process, squeezes them in here so he can put Coolio on the back end of the episode. That's a smart man, and I respect it 98 episodes in.
I'm playing chess, not checkers.
That's right. Well, thanks, James. Appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Case, tell us a little bit about his snapshot and box office.
Well, it's not good. It's just not good. It's not the worst, right? There's a lot of factors that play into this. Number one, I can only speak for myself. I think most of his work of note is from TV or TV projects. I think a lot of what he does or has done has also been international. We don't have a lot of complete data on those projects. Although I was really excited because he has a movie that was $13 billion for a budget, but it was 13 billion Italian, whatever they used in Italian.
Lira?
Yes, it was a lira. That dwindled down real fast to a pretty normal budget. He's got a lot of, and I'll bring back a phrase that we used early on, a lot of bomberoos on his list. There's one that I think has come up in the text chat that James and Kyle will find particularly interesting. The movie By the Sword. I could not find the budget for it. However, I did see the world gross of 6,000.
Ooh.
Fencing, not a very popular international sports movie.
6,000 US dollars was the world gross. And that's not good for those keeping score at home.
It's good enough to get a 2010 Mitsubishi Lancer.
Oh, no kidding?
Yeah.
Ooh.
140,000 miles, but still 2010.
Got a good 60, 70 left in her. That's all right.
Probably close to becoming a collector's item. That might be a good investment. We'll ramp it up. Perestroika has a world gross of 26,000 off of a $2 million budget. So that movie also didn't do well. I think we could do better than a Lancer on that one.
Yeah, $26,000. You're getting a nice car. All right. You get a 2020 Mercedes-Benz GLB with about 55,000 miles on it. All right. So we're talking some class here.
All right.
We're cooking with gas, baby. Cooking with gas.
The Bridge of San Luis Rey has a $24 million filming budget and world gross $1.9 million, losing over $22 million.
And wait.
Jeez.
We'll talk about it in a bit.
He's part of a really good one. Grand Budapest Hotel, $25 million budget and a $175 million world gross. So that helped balance out some of those poorer numbers. Overall, though, let's get into his comparatives. Average budget, he ranks 80th, which is in part because he's in a lot of international films that either have small budgets or budgets not listed. Total box office, 74th. Star meter, probably not a surprise to anybody, 81st. Critic ranking, 50th. Fan ranking, 74th, with his critic and fan ranking being 55.1 and 56.1 respectively. And then 96th and 81st in 2 different box office metrics. F. Murray Abraham comes in ranked 92nd
Oh, out of 98?
Out of 98. He's got weird company here. He is just ahead of Edgar Ramirez and just behind Christina Applegate in the box office metrics.
I mean, I guess I'm not shocked after learning more about him, but I think because I've enjoyed him so much as an actor, those low numbers shock me. The movies aren't all huge blockbuster hits. That part doesn't shock me. I guess it's like the star meter and the rating. Because honestly, I didn't recognize him via name value, but as I learned more about him, I was incredibly impressed. But it seems maybe a lot of other people could probably benefit from that as well.
I think it may have been the Gina Davis episode, and we talked about how she was very good about choosing things where it was like interesting and, keeping things interesting for herself. I think F. Murray Abraham was just like, man, I got to work. So sounds good. Let's what do I got to do? I'm good. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
I think he definitely just took a lot of projects, and to be fair, I'm kind of with you, James, that it's like he makes such an impact in the things that he's in.
Yeah.
That you're like, oh, even though this movie is terrible, like he's really good. So
I think he had 5 different budget currencies, meaning he's filmed movies in 5 or 6 different countries. James, how many languages does this guy speak?
I know he speaks Spanish and Italian.
Yeah, I think 3.
Okay.
Born in Pittsburgh and then raised in El Paso, Texas, as James talked about, because of asthma. He had a pretty severe asthma condition, and they moved down to Texas because it was just going to be better for his respiratory health. He primarily spoke Spanish at a young age, born in 1939. And as James mentioned, as he grew up, he self-described himself as a hoodlum. He said he stole cars, got into fights, was a little bit of a riffraff instigator. But as James mentioned, he ran into a teacher that introduced him to the world of drama, and he credits that teacher with changing his life. The F in his name is not a real thing. He didn't feel like Murray Abraham was like a great stage actor name, so he just put an F in front of it because his dad's name was Freddie. People ask him now, like, what does the F mean? And he's like, F is for famous, because I made it up. Which I find really entertaining. It kind of colors who the guy is the rest of his career.
You don't think Murray has star power?
It's not one of the sexiest names, I think. And do you know any other Murrays in the acting world other than Bill? And that's a last name.
Yeah, I was going to say first name? No.
Who knows? Maybe he's carved it out for another Murray to come down the road. But with that, getting into Shakespeare and getting into drama, right, going from the hoodlum world to now performing, he got a scholarship to UTEP, University of Texas El Paso, and that led him to go to UT Austin to do additional work. After his college degree, he moved to New York City. I think his first ad was a Fruit of the Loom ad. That one I don't think is on YouTube, but you will find his Listerine ad that he did in 1973. That one you can find on the YouTube.
Yeah, his first commercial was a Fruit of the Loom ad in which he was a talking leaf attached to grapes. He said, he's like, my parents were incredibly proud of me. You're getting work. We're proud. We saw you on the commercial. That's great. And he started doing commercial work. And that's when he realized, I'm doing this to pay the bills, but like legitimately no one takes me seriously. I'm the guy doing the jokes about, grapes and shit on the underwear commercials. And like, I want to be, a Shakespearean actor, and no one is entertaining that idea.
Coming out of the ad world, at the age of 24, I think he married his wife, Kate, at the age of 24. So I assume they met a couple years before that, but they were married in 1962. Kate Hannon, and they were together until she passed away in 2022 and had 2 kids together. And he seemed like a very happily married man who felt very connected to his wife. Again, I didn't really do the deep dive on it, but I feel like it's pretty rare when you run into the work we do with actors when they're happily married to one human their entire life.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't seem like it happens that often in that world.
You think when they met, she recognized him from the Fruit of the Loom commercials?
She was like, I got to see what's underneath that leaf.
I can confirm that they were together prior to that.
Oh, okay.
He credits her with supporting him when he was like, hey, like, I got to stop doing these commercials if I want to actually get into, real acting. And so like, it's going to cut down on our money. She didn't pass away that long ago. And the interview I saw, he was like, essentially broke down crying immediately. He's like, I credit that woman with like my entire career. She supported us through some dark times.
But his stage debut was in a performance of The Wonderful Ice Cream Suit there in the mid-60s, I believe. Finding the year was kind of hard. But his on-screen debut was in 1971's They Might Be Giants. He played Clyde, an undercover cop, and that seemed to be his niche. The first couple roles that he did in major films, he was a cop. Either the good cop or the bad cop. So he was a bad cop in Serpico in a couple scenes in 1973 as well. And then he was a good cop in All the President's Men in 1976 as Sergeant Leaper. So he was taking a little bit of the Belushi route early on, just doing the cop thing.
What's the saying that great cops make great criminals and great criminals make great cops? So maybe his childhood, he was able to put himself in the shoes of the people that he probably met a lot with some of his shenanigans.
Sounds like Blue Streak.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I didn't think about that. Is he had a unique amount of run-in with police and criminals at a young age, so he probably knows how to replicate that.
He probably met some shitheads too.
Absolutely.
This all totally explains why basically every role I ever had in every High School Musical I was in was as a cop. So,
Yeah, you're a self-proclaimed rascal.
Yeah, apparently.
Rascal.
And not the scooter kind case. I know they're always on your mind in your advanced age.
But yeah, played a lot of cops early on. He had a bunch of different TV show appearances, like one episode drops in between 75 and 1983. So a couple of those big shows were All in the Family and Kojak. Those are the two big ones I could figure out from that time. So just doing the work. To Mike's point earlier, getting jobs, and as Corey would say, like just putting in the work, find a job so you can get your name out there. I'm sure his agent was just like, let's just get you some roles so you can get in front of the screen. But his big break didn't happen until 1983 when he took on the character of Omar in the legendary story Scarface. And this is what we're calling his first major role. And I drew this one, so I was excited to cover Scarface. And since no one has really ever seen this movie or heard of it, I figured I would give a quick plot synopsis of Scarface for our listeners, because this is a little known indie film. To quote Stephen Lynch, "Do you know Tony Montana rode a boat here from Havana? Scar from eating pussy lines his face. Finds a day job washing dishes. Hates his life, he only wishes someday in this world to find his place. And he has a scheme for his own drug regime. Dream, Scarface, dream." And that kind of tells you the first 45 minutes of Scarface. You're welcome.
Beautiful.
Shout out to Stephen Lynch. He has a song called The Ballad of Scarface that if you just want to consume the movie in 4 minutes, you'll do pretty well. And F. Murray Abraham gets named in that because the next line of that song is hired by the gangster Omar. He climbs the ranks he's getting so far, selling guns and drugs out in the street. And then it goes on to talk about him dodging chainsaws. And clearly this movie is one of the most well-known films ever made. So one of the most significant pop culture films ever made. Directed by De Palma with a lot of help from Spielberg and Oliver Stone. So just like quite the combo of directing profile on this project. F. Murray's character, Omar, he essentially gives Tony Montana his first job in the industry. And you could maybe make the case that Omar's to blame for Tony's rise and fall because he's the one who hired him in the first place. So maybe we need to blame F. Murray here. But he said his accent and his attitude was pretty natural to how he was raised in El Paso. So I think for him, this was like cathartic of like, hey, I understood this life because I used to be a gangster when I was in my teens. I know James wants to talk about his death here in a little bit, but at the 66-minute mark, he gets outed as an informant and he gets thrown from a chopper. Spoiler alert.
Sosa says so?
I had never seen Scarface.
That's insane.
I'd only seen scenes of Scarface, and I knew the pop culture impact it had, mostly because originally from watching the MTV show Cribs, in which almost every athlete and rapper that I looked up to said their favorite movie was Scarface. And I was like, all right, like what is going on here? And I watched like a few minutes of it, and then I realized it was 3 hours, and I was like, I can't believe people compare this movie to The Godfather or Goodfellas. Like I'm 20 minutes in, I was like, and it's trash compared to those movies. So I never watched it. And so I finally decided to watch it for this. And I will say my viewing experience, it was a unique one. I think every actor in this movie is absolutely crushing the roles that they're given. you're getting 100% from every role, from side characters, from each main character. And I would think if they're not as committed as they are, I don't think this movie works.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredibly quotable, and I think it's incredibly quotable because it's like also incredibly episodic. Like it's scene, 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 and it's not a flowing story. And so once I realized that was happening, I kind of took a step back and I was like, all right, I don't need to compare this to the nuance of introspection that comes from like The Godfather and Goodfellas, where it's like these are bad people, but you know, it's not like right in your face. Like you have to dive deep into these decisions. This is like more of a cartoony version, and I found it really enjoyable because it's like it doesn't have much more to say other than like, hey, this guy's a piece of shit, and you know, piece of shit crime lords eventually get theirs, but every person is just selling out to do the best scene, the best dialogue that they can, and it kind of works. It's comparing apples and oranges, I guess. So I was wrong when I was younger to compare the two styles of movies, because when watching this, like, I wrote this note down because it made me laugh. In 1983, Nolan Ryan was throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, and so is Michelle Pfeiffer. Her character has no growth and very little depth. In every scene she's in, you're like, man, she's incredibly toxic, but so hot. Like, I can't keep my eyes off her. Like, is she, you know, it's like a pit bull in a cocktail dress. Like, this girl's ready to scrap at a moment's notice. And then there's like dialogue and monologues that are like fantastic. But like as a movie, it doesn't like fully link together. But I will say I really enjoyed it. F. Murray Abraham's death that would be cartoonish in a video game. And it's in this movie, but it's enjoyable. I don't know. It was just a unique experience because I was ready to hate it again. And I was like, it's not what I thought it was going to be.
So you and I have similar experiences, I guess. So the last time I would have watched this movie would have been like a brotherhood event when I was in the fraternity in college. Mm-hmm. I remember watching it then. We also watched a lot of Bruce Lee movies. That's the last time I remember watching Scarface. And I had a similar experience where I was like, this is so ridiculous, but like I get why so many people love this. So now watching it like 11, 12, 13 years later, I had the exact same experience that you did, where that first 20, 30 minutes, I was just like, there's 2.5 hours of this left. Like, holy shit. Why? And then like, as it went on, and then yes, the incredibly cartoonish death of F. Murray Abraham's character is just like, I was kind of bought in there. And your comparison to it being a cartoon version of like gangster movies, I think really helped me now understand where I was coming from, because I'm like, yeah, no, that actually makes so much more sense, because I think before you said what you said, I was still in that mode of like, man, like when I want De Palma gangsters, I'll go watch The Untouchables. I love that movie. Mm-hmm. That movie is so good, and it's only 2 hours. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like I was expecting the Miami Cuban drug lord version of that, I guess. Probably the first time I saw it.
Same.
And then even this time, because it'd been so long since I'd seen anything but just like those iconic moments, I think I was still expecting it to be more like that, and it wasn't. And so for me, I was kind of like, I'm good. Like, I'm glad that I watched this, because like I get the cultural relevance. I get like why people love this movie. I am 100% behind you on the actors, because I was like, man, the performances in this are the best part. Like, yeah, everybody is so good. I fully sign up on that, but I'm just also kind of like, it's not exactly my kind of gangster movie, and I'm cool with that.
By the time the Push It to the Limit montage, which is like the 80s montage to end all 80s montage, happens, you're like, all right, we're going full excess, full over the top, 80s Coke, we're filthy rich, everyone's flashy, and you're rooting for nobody in this movie. There's a whole nother hour left. And I'm like, what could possibly lead? And like, there's stories about him not wanting to kill kids, but, wanting to kill this guy and working with the government. And you're like, where is this going? And then it ends in, the most iconic scene of the "Say Hello to My Little Friend." And by the time you get to like the final half hour, I was like, all right, this is kind of where all the story connects together. But like getting here, it was like watching like an opera where it was like, hey, do you want nuance? Because you're not going to get nuance. What you're going to get is scale. I'm going to give you 50 guys getting blown away and a mound of cocaine the size of, a small child. And like you're going to get Michelle Pfeiffer saying racial slurs to him in an argument as he's dripped in gold. It's like as over the top as possible. And that's when I was like, all right, so I can't compare the two. It's a completely different movie than the gangster films I like, but I am enjoying what I'm watching.
Did you find yourself referring to flamingos as pelicans? Because that would be full.
Laugh out loud funny. He's like, look at the pelican. It's clearly a flamingo.
The movie is just a full, all-out experience on the senses in every way possible, and somehow it still can't be glory. I love it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, the interesting part about this movie, beyond everything we just talked about, is he was filming this at the same time he was filming Amadeus. He auditioned for Amadeus for a small part, and then after he auditioned, the director had him play the role of his character, Antonio, just to because he needed a scene partner. And the director was like, that's pretty darn good. I know you're not a big name yet, but I think you'd be really good for this character. He went off and he had already taken the job on Scarface. And so they said, let's wait. And my understanding is he was flying back and forth between Prague and the United States to film both films.
Which is crazy considering how different the two films are.
Yeah.
It's also awesome that a director was willing to, he's about to film a 3-hour biopic epic on Mozart, and he's taking a risk on an unknown actor as the main role. That takes balls, and obviously it paid off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I note that because you're right. Even though Scarface came out before Amadeus, it wasn't out and about for the world to see F. Murray as the gangster Omar before he was cast in this role, which earned him Oscar and Golden Globe wins for Best Actor. So he came out the gate pretty hot.
Yeah.
That movie's pretty darn good. It's long as shit, but it's pretty darn good.
Talk about a movie that is also long, like Scarface. But man, I love this movie, to be honest. I think personally, this is probably, of the performances of his that I saw preparing for this, it's probably still my favorite performance of his, just because it is so good.
Yeah.
Tom Hulce is also fantastic. The two of them together are what make that movie so good. I knew this was one of his first big roles, but I didn't realize how really unknown he was when he did this. And it was a very courageous move, but man, it paid off for kind of everybody involved. And it is a fantastic film.
Yeah, Milos Forman said originally they were going to cast somebody bigger name because he didn't want somebody a big name as Mozart, because he wanted the audience to see Mozart as the character, not as some big name actor. But he was like, Antonius could be anybody. And then he saw F. Murray relax doing his line reading. He's like, you would be great at this. I have to convince people, but we're going to wait. And you're talking about a movie that won 8 Oscars and is the number 76 on the IMDb top 250 most highly rated films of all time. So it's a big deal.
And it inspired Falco's 1986 Rock Me Amadeus. So
Amadeus.
maybe the most notable accomplishment.
I have put off watching this movie for so long for a few reasons. 1, 3 hours, instant turnoff. 2, the name of it, immediately knowing it's going to be about classical music, be like, oh, no, not for me. And 3, it being a period piece, I'm like, these are 3 things I can't stand. So I never watched it. I assumed it was boring and incredibly dramatic, and everyone had these overly English accents. I was like, this just isn't for me. And when I turn this on, and you make it 10 minutes in, and you realize kind of how they're telling the story, I was so impressed. It is kind of a fun jealousy, revenge, failed old man looking back on his life. And when they finally introduce Mozart, him as this legend, and then you meet him and it's just a rock star trying to get pussy, and you're like, oh, he doesn't give a fuck about any of this. All right, this is actually kind of funny. And I found it very entertaining.
I saw in interviews that they talked about how these two were not the most friendly on set, and it really helped the dynamic. F. Murray he stayed at a different hotel from the rest of the cast, and because of that, they would go to parties and wouldn't invite him because he just wouldn't be able to go. And so it created this weird tension that I think only helped the characters on set.
Interesting.
That's cool.
I loved that he kept referring to Mozart as a preacher. And then when he would describe his music, he'd be like, but I got to give it to him. It was like I was listening to God write music. It's like I fucking hated this man, but
Damn, he's
credit
good.
where credit's due. He's really incredible at what he does.
It's basically how I feel about Tom Brady. So
So what's really interesting about our boy F. Murray is comes out of the gate fast, wins the Oscar, and then I think he gets an air about him after that. He's an actor's actor. He's a nerd at his core when it comes to acting and loving the process of it. But this is a guy that after he won his Oscar, for years he was notorious for like bringing it on theater stages and having it somewhere on the set, like hidden so the audience couldn't find it. But the rest of the actors would randomly find it on set. Like the dude was obsessed with the fact he won his Oscar, and because of it, everything I read is that he turned down a bunch of roles and got really picky, and it kind of fucked his career early on.
Oh yeah.
He turned out a ton of roles, and then he just started doing theater for like $90 a pop. And he even self-admits that he was a rising star that quickly like petered out, and he had to kind of redefine his career a decade later.
I find it fascinating because it's clear he made an artistic choice where it's like, hey, you could have a ton of commercial success, and he was like insulted by it. He's like, I didn't win my Oscar for being, let's say, for the movie coming up shortly, an action hero, right? Like I won it because of my artistic performance, and he's like, I was kind of insulted by these roles that I was getting. So much so that I forget the film critic's name, but he dubbed it like kind of like an Oscar jinx, and he called it F. Murray Abraham syndrome, where afterwards you refuse to take kind of pop culture roles. So much to the point where like I appreciate that Maria kind of talks shit. He's like, I've dined with kings and presidents. He's like, if this is looked at as a negative, he's like, I'll take it 3 times over. He's like, I don't see any negatives. He's like, this was a choice by me. Hindsight's 20/20, right? Maybe he was a little too picky on the roles.
You look at his ascension so far professionally, I bet you he doesn't have a big group of people that can help guide him through a career.
Mm.
You know, we just watched Christopher Nolan win, all these awards during the Oscars. I mean, him and Murphy have been doing those movies together forever, and they've been a team this whole time. And so I think, F. Murray Abraham's probably lacking some direction from the professional side where he has zero exposure to.
Yeah, you'll find later in his career he's very grateful for working with particular filmmakers, because I think he probably had some not so great experiences in the 80s and 90s, right?
Yeah.
Because if you look at that period of 86 to 95, he's got 22 really poorly rated films in there that just like, when Casey was talking about box office numbers, I kind of knew because I saw the Rotten Tomatoes scores. There's not much to mention in that time that is worthwhile. I mean, By the Sword, which Case talked about losing a bunch of money. If you want to watch him and Eric Roberts go toe-to-toe and almost kill each other with fencing swords, that's an experience. He was in The Name of the Rose with Sean Connery in 1986, a really boring period piece that I couldn't finish.
That's the $30 billion budget movie.
No, there you go.
Of course, it's Italian 30 billion, but
I mean, it's Sean Connery, so I understand why, but my God, it's awful. And then Loaded Weapon, which Case and I talked about as like the parody of the parody.
It's just strange that he would do this National Lampoon's movie.
Mm-hmm. I did also read during that time he got into a car crash on the set of Surviving the Game in 1993. As played a character named Wolf Sr. I don't know anything about the movie. I just know off screen he got into a car accident during that filming.
Oh, Surviving the Game's a massive pop culture film. It's the movie based on the book, The Most Dangerous Game. They take homeless people and they hunt them. In this movie, the homeless person that they hunt is Ice-T. So this movie was really, really popular.
Yeah.
I don't think critically or from the fans that was received all that well.
Yeah, I see a Rucker Hauer and Gary Busey, John McGinley. So yeah, it had a decent little crew of actors on the set.
Mm-hmm.
Last Action Hero played John Practice alongside Arnold.
It seemed like a fun premise for an action movie, especially when in the late 80s, early 90s, Hollywood was just cranking out cookie cutter action films. And this was a completely different spin on it. I got to rewatch it and see how I feel about it decades later.
Yeah, the kid, because of a magic movie ticket, gets sucked into the fictional world of his action figure, which is a cool concept. That's an interesting concept for a film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching it as a kid, and it was actually what I wanted to watch, and I was having a hard time, finding it. And
yeah,
one of those ones you would think would be on something, but kind of hard to find.
Go into the Woody Allen side of things. In 1995's Mighty Aphrodite, he played the leader. It's an interesting format.
It is, and it's actually one of those things where, so I'm not a huge Woody Allen fan.
No.
There are certain things that I like, but like...
Are you talking about his art or him as a person?
Mostly his art.
Oh, okay.
I mean, as a person too, but I mean, I was talking more about his art. I went into it like not really expecting a whole lot. And then when I realized like how we were telling this story where it's, this like ancient Greek play going on while like the modern adaptation is happening, and like Woody Allen can go between the two, and characters show up in the modern version that are the classic Greek version, and the storytelling device is really kind of interesting and fun.
Agree.
To me personally, like the classic Greek characters, so F. Murray Abraham, the chorus that he leads, the Cassandra and the king, and like so David Ogden Stiers and a couple of these other actors, they're just so over the top and campy that it's so funny. Mm-hmm. And so they're really these like nice like bits of conscious but also like fresh air at the same time. The whole time we were watching it, I just remember sitting there going, F. Murray Abraham and this Greek chorus are the best part of this, because the commentary and the things that they say are just, it's like, like you're being a neurotic dipshit. Like, stop being a neurotic dipshit.
But that's Woody Allen's shtick. That's just what he does.
Exactly. So it's funny. Like, I love the way that they tell the story. The leader of the Greek chorus, like, he has a lot of good bits that really add a lot to the film and the story.
It's a good checkpoint for him, because 95, it's on the back end of that slog of really bad, not well-rated movies. So you kind of see him turn a little bit of a new leaf in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, typical Woody Allen. Like, the dude just complaining, neuroticism. Like, that's Woody Allen on screen. Not a lot of range for that guy.
Yeah.
97, he was in Mimic, played Dr. Gates, one of Guillermo del Toro's earliest directorial pictures about create an insect to kill cockroaches carrying a viral disease, and now the insects are out to destroy their only predator, mankind. It's a little monster movie from the late 90s. Has pretty good reviews.
This and Species I just kind of blur together.
Mm-hmm. Is there aggressive amounts of nudity in this one? Because that is what I remember about Species. It's a formative moment for us at 9 years old.
Oh, the only thing I remember of Mimic is Charles S. Dutton, who I want to say was like played the same role in like 3 or 4 movies, and that's why when I was young I was like, oh, I know who that guy is.
Well, he goes to the sci-fi side for the first time. Well, I guess Mimic technically is sci-fi, but
it's absolutely sci-fi. We're talking about killer cockroaches.
Yeah, I was about to say. I saw an interview and they asked him about it. He said, other than Slipstream, this was my first sci-fi flick. So maybe that interview came out before Mimic came out. I don't know. But Star Trek Insurrection is one of his like top 4 in IMDb. He plays Adhar, one of the basically the bad guy, the baddie in the movie. And I don't even really like Star Trek, but that movie is solid. I rewatched it. I didn't mind it. He's good. He's a good baddie.
Yes.
Except the voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can't really tell it's him. They do a really good job with the makeup. It's pretty covert.
Along with having that commanding voice, I think he's able to turn on a very ominous presence in roles. I think we're starting to see this be his like wheelhouse. We'll see this a lot more as his career goes on.
Did he play a genocidal maniac in other roles? Because that's 100% what he is in this one.
Not to the degree he did intergalactically.
Real Thanos style here, just in one community, though.
I like that Star Trek has figured out that, like, if you just take human actors and do great makeup and effects on their noses and foreheads, that's enough for us to be like, that doesn't look like a human. Like, it's not a lot, but they're like, what if we just gave them a weird forehead and a weird nose, but the rest of it's a human face? And you're like, yeah, that's what I would expect an alien to look like for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he said it would take 4.5 hours every morning to put all the makeup on, and an additional 45 minutes after to take it off.
Oof.
5 hours basically in makeup. And I learned like you really got to be careful when you take it off so that way it doesn't irritate your skin so you can actually put it back on the next day, which I thought was interesting.
Mhm.
It goes from Star Trek Insurrection to a Muppet movie in Muppets from Space in 1999. He played Noah.
His third sci-fi movie.
4, including Slipstream. Number 4. And then he plays an asshole teacher in Finding Forrester in 2000, another crossover with Sean Connery.
Is this where "You're the man now, dog" the quote comes from?
I think so.
"You're the man now, dog." Yeah, it's just so. It was like the first memed quote I've ever seen. Because I remember people made a website after it because they're like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, it's YTMND.com. I remember that.
Of course.
I was worried that Finding Forrester would be one of those movies that just does not age well, right? Like 25 years later, you're like, ooh. But it actually was pretty solid. I didn't mind it. I mean, the dynamic between the two leads was, I think, generally believable. And F. Murray's right in his bag as just a hard-ass teacher who basically is trying to bring up this kid on cheating charges. And so another movie where he's the villain.
Just being a dick, an old dick.
Villain, if you're thinking someone's cheating, you're doing your due diligence.
Yeah, but I don't know if he had that much evidence. He was just looking for a reason to kick this kid out.
Right.
Maybe it was the Millennium that was just messing with him. I don't know. It was one way or the other. And then continues down the villain track as Cyrus in 13 Ghosts, a movie where he spends the first 10 minutes on scene and then the final 10 minutes, and you don't see him for the rest of the film.
What a great weird ass movie.
I agree. It's a good bad movie.
It's bad, but I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it when I was younger, and I remember it being one of those movies that my cousins and I we liked watching it, and we knew it wasn't good, but it was just weird and fun. And I remember watching it, catching it on one of the streaming services or something a couple of years ago, and being like, what is this? And watching it, being having that weird, intense nostalgia of, oh, I remember this movie. And then totally blanked on the fact that F. Murray Abraham was Cyrus. And, is, the old man who dies at the beginning and then kind of has a little resurrection there at the end. And when I saw it on the list, I was like, hell yes. I am totally watching this movie again because
me too.
It's so weird, but it's so good. And like you said, one of those movies that is bad, but it's one of those, it's bad in the right ways that you're like, this is so enjoyable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I feel like comedies and horror movies can be actively bad and can still be very enjoyable. And this is one of those horror movies where you watch it and you're like, wow, that's stupid. But I'm enjoying my time here. Matthew Lillard being as,
hell yeah,
calamity, campy Matthew Lillard as possible is great. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Tony Shalhoub is the sympathetic dad, I thought.
Exactly. Tony Shalhoub is taking it serious. It's one of those movies where you're watching it and you're like, I won't say this is a bad movie. I know it's not a good movie, but I'm not going to say it's a bad movie either.
Yeah.
The creature designs are cool. It's cool.
The ghosts are good. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the big guy. I thought he was great.
The Juggernaut or whatever his name is.
The Juggernaut.
Yeah, the Juggernaut. Thank you. And
you know what we should do though? We should transition from conversation about ghosts to more ghosts and referencing Jesus Christ in largest audience gap for the film Joshua, where he plays Father Tardone in 2002, and James has it.
Oh, did you actually watch this movie? I was shocked you had any idea what the plot was about.
I did. I did watch this. I did not enjoy watching it, but I did watch it.
Okay, so Joshua it's got a 22% from critics and a 77% from audience. So that is a huge gap. And Kyle kind of gave you the spoiler alert on why that might be. It was released in 2002, went on to earn a solid $1.4 million. It had a budget of $9 million, so it lost just over $7 million, which I think qualifies it as a bomberooski. A lot of it is, what should we say here? Tony Goldwyn, handsome as ever, arrives in a small town. At first, no one knows his name or where he came from. Locals want to call him a stranger, but when you meet the guy, he's just so goddamn charming, excuse me, Father, for using the Lord's name in vain. He makes them feel like, they're friends. and his name is Joshua, and he seems to be everywhere at once, helping people in the town, and he just makes them feel loved. It's the exact influence, though, that the Orthodox preacher, Father Tardone, played by F. Murray Abraham, he doesn't like it. This guy's trying to build a cult. What's going on here? Watching this movie and criticizing it is like if you're not religious and you were to go to a religious sermon and it is incredibly pleasant and no one says anything that is inflammatory or makes you shiver. It's just hit you over the head, right on the nose allegories that are, supposed to teach you like basic life lessons, like be nice to someone or help those who are in need. So like, you can't really be mad at it. Is it my cup of tea? No. Would I call it entertaining? No. But like, I didn't hate it. It's just like watching a made-for-TV movie. Like I'm not going to sit here and tell someone like, hey, this movie fucking sucks. It's about kind of Jesus being nice to people. It's just like, who is this for? I don't know. It's not for me. I think my very religious grandmother would watch this and go, wow, what a great movie. And then I watch it and go, I'm glad you enjoyed that, Grandma. Like it's not my thing. Would I give it a 22? No, I think the actors actually did pretty well with what they were given. It's like trying to critique a Hallmark movie where like, I know where this is going. I know what's happening. My criticisms of the movie are it is like way too forced when it comes to the miracles that Tony Goldwyn is performing. I think it's better when it's like way more subtle, him teaching the lessons of Jesus Christ, where it's, yeah, you know what, maybe you shouldn't fear God's love. Maybe we should focus on the positive things that the Bible says instead of the negative damning things. Yeah, I think that's a message I can get behind. But then it's like he cures a woman's blindness. I'm like, all right, I understand what's going on here. And so I won't come anywhere close to agreeing with the 77, but 22 feels low. I think we're going to go 40 on my score, where it's like, hey, it's not for me, but I'm not going to badmouth it if it is for you.
If you've seen Finding Forrester, you've seen F. Murray character in this movie. It's pretty much the same exact character. Just stubborn as all hell, thinks he knows everything. I would say he nails his role as the stubborn pastor who doesn't want this new Jesus-like character coming to town and promoting new ideas about Christianity.
I was going to say, I felt like the actors did okay.
Yeah, he nails it.
The main ones. Some of the side characters are clearly like this is the first and only role they've ever had, and that comes across. But the main actors, I feel like, did a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm.
It's an after-school special for Catholics and Christians. So there you go.
It's teaching a progressive form of Christianity. So it's progressive in that sense, I guess.
Right.
Despite playing Father Tardone, he once again is in the villain role. That's what it sounds like.
It's not really a villain role.
It's not a villain.
It's a villain role in a G-rated movie where maybe a Monsignor is a little too defensive of his practices. It's like
he's close-minded.
Okay.
Yeah, like how could you say it's a villain when it's like, no, he just wants his church to look the way he wants it to look. And then this guy has to teach him like, maybe it should look the way the community wants it to look. And you're like, oh, I see the message. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's like that, but like for an hour and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the antagonist of the story, just like he is in Finding Forrester, but neither are really villains, ultimately, at the end of the day. But to your point, Case, he's played a bunch of religious figures over the years, too. He was in Noah's Ark, that miniseries in 99, played a lot. He's played a couple other religious characters in his career, too. So, again, the man likes to act. So he's an auteur. He's going to do pretty much anything.
Yeah.
His first big narrating role that I could find, though, was in 2003. He narrated Pompeii: The Last Day. So I'm doing something a little different. He's got a great voice.
Yeah.
So even though I haven't seen that, I'm sure his voice is perfect for that. And honestly, I'm shocked he hasn't done more of those types of things. I mean, I know we'll talk about Grand Budapest Hotel. The story goes through his narration, right? So I guess he's done some more of that, but he's got a good voice. He could do more of that if he wanted.
He's in love with Italy, so I'm not shocked that
that's true.
Him being the narrator for the story of Pompeii.
That's true. All right, so we got back-to-back reviews. So we have lowest critic score, which is the Bridge of San Luis Rey. Aubrey was supposed to tackle, but because of scheduling and I don't think any of us have actually seen this film.
No.
Negative.
Insert that Aubrey misses lowest critic score, the clip of Cardi B saying, "How convenient is that? How convenient is that?"
Honestly, I feel like I wish I would have seen this because again, the cast is
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
F. Murray, it's Gabriel Byrne, it's Robert De Niro, it's Kathy Bates, and Harvey Keitel. Like
Harvey Keitel. Yep.
that explains that massive budget. I think he said how much? 26 million, something like that. I think it was 24 million.
Yep. 24 million, 1.9 world gross.
I'm gonna guess 20 of that was just in salaries for their actors, most likely.
Yeah.
This is a remake of a film. I did a little bit of research before this. It's about a story from the 15th century of a bridge that collapsed and a bunch of people died in Peru. And so he plays the viceroy of Peru in the film, along with a bunch of other like main political or religious characters. It is just astronomically bad, apparently. All things. 4% critic score.
The description in IMDb reads, in 1714 Peru, a friar is tried by the Inquisition for questioning God's intention when 5 die in the collapse of an Andean rope bridge. I mean, if I ever hear of somebody dying on a bridge and it's followed up with a rope bridge, I go, well, yeah.
You can remember. That's how people got around then.
We made a $24 million movie about a rope bridge. Yeah, of course people died.
One of my goals in life, Case, is to not die in a way where people go, "What a fucking idiot." I want people to at least go, "Oh man, that sucks to hear," as opposed to, "I'm sorry, what? He was on a loosely tied rope bridge? What an idiot."
Unfortunately, this movie was directed by Mary McCookian, and unfortunately, this is her last directing credit.
All right, so let's go from that to another movie that also lost a lot of money, and that's Perestroika, which is our largest critic gap. And Mike, our guest Munson, drew this one.
Going from one bad movie to another. So to talk about Perestroika, it has a 57% on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics with a 33% audience score. So to give you some background on Perestroika, well, I'll tell you this. This movie definitely teaches you that perestroika means restructuring in Russian. If you walk away from this film not knowing that,
yes,
you have failed somehow. I don't really have anything better to say. But the basic gist of it is that it's about a physicist named Sasha Greenberg, who is a Russian physicist who escaped Russia because he didn't want to be stuck making nukes for the Russians. So he's Jewish, and so he tries to go to Israel. He ends up being able to go to America, but then he has to go back to Russia after the fall of the USSR, basically it's his current lover made a movie that they're screening, but it's also for him to kind of reconnect with all of his old friends and his family and the struggles that he faces as this excommunicated physicist, essentially, because he's a bad guy because he went and made nukes for the other guys instead of making them for Russia. Okay. Most of the movie is actually about how much of a womanizer he is and how he goes from sleeping with one woman to the next. And they are all varying degrees of incredibly intelligent women that are very successful and attractive. And yet he just, sleeps his way through all of them. One of them is Ali Sheedy from Breakfast Club.
Mm-hmm.
So she's the only other real name besides from Robard, who plays However, F. Murray Abraham plays his mentor. And again, we were talking about antagonist. He's the antagonist. He's not really the villain. The villain is Russian society and how much of dicks they're being to him. But F. Murray Abraham plays his mentor / antagonist named Professor Gross, who is kind of the opposite of him. He's an American who worked on the Manhattan Project, and then because of McCarthyism, he was very, much a target because he was very socialist and anti-McCarthy, and so he got a target on his back, and Russia was like, hey, you worked on the Manhattan Project. Want to come build nukes? And he said yes, so he did. There are a lot of films where F. Murray Abraham is definitely the best part of the film. This is no different. When he comes on screen, he's this presence. And he's like intimidating, but he's intimidating in one sense that because he's clearly so smart. He is probably the smartest person in a movie full of very smart people.
Mm.
And then he's also like a dick. And so you just never know if he's going to impart some very insightful wisdom or if he's just going to just eviscerate you with his words. I think it's because he just delivers them so well, are really good. Until the end, when he has a whole speech about what perestroika is and restructuring of lives, and him and Sam Robards have this whole back and forth, and like that, it gets to a point where they say the word perestroika so many times it loses all meaning. But it's one of those movies where like his performance is really what carries it. Going off of James's score, if 40 is a movie that is not great, but I'm not going to bash it, then I think the 33 that audiences give this was generous, and I'm going to go with like a 25.
Lower than both.
Lower than both. Mostly because of F. Murray Abraham, and partly because he makes some really funny jokes at Sam Robards' expense that I actually laughed out loud about.
In an alarming trend, this movie was directed by Slava Sukerman, and this was the last movie Slava directed.
There you
go. 2 in a row. Last movie people have directed. Now I'm going to check the next ones.
At least now when you show up to beer trivia a couple years from now and there's a question about what is Russian for reorganization, then you'll have the answer. Or what does perestroika mean?
Yeah.
You'll be thankful for this. We've got one more review in like 6 years from now. But before that, a few notable projects between 2007 and 2013. First and foremost, he narrated 40 episodes of Nature. So some more narration work on PBS.
Yeah, when you guys were talking about his voice earlier, and this was a high-profile series on PBS, and I distinctly remember that voice, and it wasn't until tonight I put it together. So that was a big show, long-running. I think it was probably like a 5 or 6 season, and obviously he rules.
He rules. Guy's got a great voice, man. I'm very sad that Aubrey didn't make it for many reasons, but in particular because I was really looking forward to his review of Shark Swarm as Professor Girdler as our resident shark expert. Daryl Hannah's in that movie, I noticed when I looked it up earlier, former Munson, but unfortunately the online profiles didn't give me much to work with. There's no critic score. There's only a very low audience score on Rotten Tomatoes tied to this movie. And I'm going to guess it's really hard to find in the first place. But if anybody could find it, Aubrey could do it.
Uh-huh. Probably owns it. Is it part of the Criterion collection? Because if it is, he owns it.
It's not. I would have found that in my research. It's in his criteria collection, and that's just shark movies ripped from different corners of the internet. This is about the time he starts to do TV again. He had done some early in his career, but really hadn't done much. He had been really sticking to theater and movies. But right around 2008 is when he started doing TV and including some pretty big shows. So Saving Grace, which was Holly Hunter's big TV show when we covered her. Law and Order, Criminal Intent, yep. Blue Bloods, Elementary, The Good Wife. He played Louis C.K.'s uncle and a few other characters in Louis over an 8-year period. There's also an interview where he's like praising Louis C.K. hard as hell, and it's kind of cringe years later. Who knew the dude was masturbating in front of female comics? Who knew? I don't know.
Did you ever watch Louis when the show was on?
Oh yeah.
I did. I don't remember him though.
So I remember 2 of his 3 characters because 2 of them were his uncle. He played Louis' uncle and Louis' dad. The way it is shot and the way they do it is so funny because they just give him like a monologue to read, just a full 4 to 5 minutes of Louis sitting there clearly disconnected from the family he comes from, and it being this like traditional European family where he's not speaking to his dad or his uncle, and his dad and his uncle are speaking to him, and every time he tries to interject they just like cut him off and keep going, and they give F. Murray like grace to say the most outlandish shit, and every time it cracks me up because he's just like trying to be like, hey dad, how are you? Like, "Hey, Uncle Excelsior, how's life?"
Uncle Excelsior.
Yeah, he's going off on rants about how like polygamy's not that big of a deal, and how we used to actually hunt street cats by ourselves, and like we would eat them and they were delicious. And he's just sitting there like, what the fuck? You guys never told me this shit. And he won't let him get a word in every time. And I found it hilarious because Louis itself is a very unique show, and I appreciate that he made it unique. I also appreciate that he got canceled because it sounds like, based on everything I've heard, he's a dipshit, but I always found him hilarious until that moment happened. But F. Murray Abraham's monologues are fucking killer in that show. They're definitely worth YouTubing, even if you don't know the context of it, other than it being like, hey, that's his dad or his uncle, because it is just one guy just trying to be like, hey, can we order some food? He's like, no, first I have to tell you the story about how your dad and I double teamed a girl back in the day. He's like, what the fuck is happening right now?
It seemed like he had some fun.
Yeah.
Because if you go to YouTube, it's just like Louis monologue for all of his characters.
Oh, dude, it's best.
It sounds like Louis seeked him out and to hire him to play some of these like fatherly figure roles in the show. So that says something about what he thought of F. Murray as an actor.
Yeah.
And then his first big recurring character was in 2012 as Homeland Dara Dal. 43 episodes of that, including 2 Primetime Emmy nominations and 2 SAG Ensemble noms.
This is hands down my favorite work from him. I loved him in this show.
I never watched Homeland. I've heard so many amazing things about it, but I watched a couple clips of him from this, and I was like, holy cow, this is great. And then I read him do an interview about one of the reasons why he liked this character so much is because you just never knew what was going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah, I see that. It's very hard to, like, be purposefully untrustworthy as an actor. Like, it's a very nuanced thing, and he just freaking nails it.
Him and his character create tension with everybody that they have contact with, and you don't know, is he a U.S. agent or is he a spy? Like you really don't know. Him and his character have very little concern giving somebody to the bad guys and just being like, hey, we're going to sacrifice this pawn. We're done with you, and it's jarring. He's great in this role.
To think it took him almost 30 years to get another role that got any substantive, like award nominations. That's wild. 84 to 2012. I don't know when he got his first one, so maybe even around 2014, 2015. 30 years.
I wonder if him not winning has to do with the questionable character of his character. Because he should have won something for this role. He's unbelievable. Where people honestly not wanting to vote for him because they're like, I don't want to give an Emmy to a maniac. A guy playing a character that's a maniac. I mean, you really don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy.
His 2 noms were in 2015 and 2018, so it was 31 years between words. Well, there's more TV to come, but before we get to more TV shows, we got our last review, and that's highest critic score. So I think we saved the best for last on this one, and that's a movie he's not in much, but he's in, and that's 2013's Inside Llewyn Davis. In case has it.
His portion of this movie, albeit small, is critically important.
Mm-hmm.
So Inside Llewyn Davis is a 2013 dark comedy drama. Tough to pin down what genre this is, but it's by the Coen brothers. It's a melancholic yet strangely captivating portrait of a struggling folk singer, Llewyn Davis, in 1960s Greenwich Village. The movie cast Oscar Isaac, John Goodman, Carey Mulligan, Garrett Hedlund, Justin Timberlake, Adam Driver, and the star of our show, F. Murray Abraham. Really, the story's about Oscar Isaac playing Llewyn Davis while he works his way through really bad performing gigs, crashing on couches, facing consequences of his past mistakes and bad relationships, and a tormented cat-sitting experience where the whole first act of the movie is themed by him having to take care of a cat that sneaks out of his friend's apartment.
Multiple cats.
Yes, that's true.
Several cats.
Oscar Isaac nails in every way in this role, from his haunting voice to his stubborn, disruptive pride as a person and a musician. He delivers a star-making performance. It puts on full display his character's bitterness and fleeting, like, hope that he's going to become a musician or he's going to become anything. The cinematography in this movie is incredible. The music's incredible. And in fact, I didn't even realize this. Farewell to Thee, I've had on multiple playlists on Spotify since our Chris Pratt episode when we covered the song that he wrote for that movie, wrote and performed in that movie.
10 years?
Yeah, 10 years, yeah. For some, the problem for this movie is going to be that if you're looking for a happy ending or a clear, like, feel-good story, this ain't it. But for those that appreciate a character study that only the Coen brothers can deliver, I highly recommend seeing it if you haven't. But in terms of F. Murray Abraham, he adds a significant layer of complexity with his brief role as Bud Grossman. And Bud Grossman is a role that appears to be based on real-life Albert Grossman, Chicago club owner and music manager. And he represents a potential turning point. Like, it's almost a pilgrimage for Oscar Isaac's character to get to Chicago to have an opportunity to meet with Bud Grossman. During the audition, it's hilarious because there's this incredible tension because it's like the world stops as Oscar Isaac is playing this beautiful rendition of The Death of Queen Anne. And F. Murray Abraham, like we've talked about in a lot of other roles, he's just got this presence, and you're like, is he being blown away by this performance or is he indifferent? You can't tell. And then he gets done and they just stare at each other for a second. And then Grossman just simply says, I don't see a lot of money here. And that was the end of the audition. And the end, I mean, both Oscar Isaacs and my hopes and dreams were torn out of my soul in that one moment. And I think you said, 5 minutes he's in this movie, Kyle?
I think it's 5 minutes total. And he says you should find a performing partner.
Yeah.
And he spent the whole movie trying not to talk about his partner who threw himself off a bridge. You don't throw yourself off that bridge. You throw yourself off the Brooklyn Bridge or whatever he said. John Goodman's character says.
My favorite part about how this movie was written is that they don't kowtow into going, yeah, I guess I will. And because I think F. Murray Abraham says, have you ever thought about performing with a partner?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but I won't do it. He's like, I've done it. I can't do that again. And so it's certainly not heartwarming, but it's very entertaining. It's paced well, it's shot well, and it's a really easy and fun movie to watch.
It's one of those movies that, being a movie person, like, I've heard a lot about and had never actually watched until this. And then we sat down and watched it, and yeah, F. Murray Abraham is literally in it for 5 minutes. But to Kyle's point, I get why people love it so much, because it is just a fantastically built story.
I need to hear from his twin.
Watching this, I found it incredibly fascinating that it tells a story of the tortured, creative, egotistical, but clearly talented artist. He refuses to change for anybody because he knows what he wants his artistic output to be. And that's why I found F. Murray scene so funny, because he plays this song and the whole time you're like, that song is beautiful. And then Murray's like, I don't think I can make any money off this. It's like, well, that's it? He's like, yeah, that's it. He's like, all right.
Moving on.
And he's kind of like a piece of shit throughout the movie. Like, he's fucking refuses to pay bills, and he's kind of womanizing, and he's not taking responsibility for any of the shit he's doing. But when it comes to the art, he could not be more serious. Like, this is the only thing I give a shit about.
That and finding a good couch to sleep on. He's very serious about that.
I love this movie.
Agree.
I felt really shitty listening to you guys talk about your awful movies, knowing that I was going to have a lot of good stuff to say about my good movie.
Hey, I had Scarface, so I was fine.
Oh, that's true.
Those two.
I don't think he's a good person, but I get why he's the way he is.
Yep.
I felt bad for the cats.
Yeah.
As a cat dude, I was like, I hope he fucking finds this cat. I'm losing my mind. Yeah, I'm losing my mind.
It's fucking hard, man. Especially when it's a second cat. The sex is wrong. You're like, oh my God, now there's 2 cats displaced. Like, what are we doing here? This is animal cruelty. Call somebody. All right, well, let's keep her moving. I'm glad everybody watched it and everybody really enjoyed this film. So nothing else. You should be inspired to go watch it yourself if you haven't seen it. It's streaming free in a couple different places. It's great. All right, so no more big reviews. So we're kind of just rounding out the last 10 years of his career. And to be frank, his career takes a pretty cool turn comparatively to what we saw in the 80s and 90s after Amadeus and Scarface. And so Inside Llewyn Davis, small part, but really successful Coen Brothers film. Homeland, obviously a big deal. And then he enters into the Wes Anderson universe. And he's done Wes Anderson plays over the years, too, is my understanding. But he's essentially Mr. Moustafa in the Grand Budapest Hotel, a movie with Owen Wilson and Willem Dafoe. We've talked about a few times before, but it goes through him. He's essentially the storytelling device.
This is my favorite Wes Anderson movie. I mean, I like a lot of Wes Anderson's movies, but this is my favorite one. I just think it's
very good.
It's just so complete and so well done, and the different layers of, like, you know, Jude Law telling a story to F. Murray Abraham telling the story, and like all of that kind of stuff, and just kind of the layers of it and everything. It's just it's a fun movie. Like it's a nice balance of comedy and, you know, drama and love story and all of that kind of stuff. It's just one of those movies that it's just really, when you're having a bad day, it's, for me, it's one of those movies I can just put on and be like, okay, all good.
I will agree. Very enjoyable movie. I'm not sure if it's my favorite Wes Anderson, but I will say it is up there. It took me a second to realize that the lobby boy was F. Murray Abraham. But then I realized that was done intentionally by Wes Anderson, because the country that he says F. Murray's from is kind of a made-up Middle Eastern country. And so the kid who's portraying a younger version of Murray is supposed to be from that made-up Middle Eastern country, but the actor himself is actually Venezuelan. So he's way darker than Murray. And so I was like, wait, who the fuck is that? Oh, that's him. And then I realized that was kind of like the movie magic that Wes Anderson's going for. Is like, you're not really supposed to know where this person's from. Just have fun with the story. It's like, these are Nazis, but they're not really Nazis. Like, I was like, okay, got it.
Our resident expert of Curb Your Enthusiasm, James, he was in an episode in 2017, I believe, as like an acting coach, right, for Larry?
Usually for Curb, there's like an exciting incident in the first episode that kind of connects the whole season. And most episodes are just like one-offs where like that's a background story. And in this season, Larry is producing a play called Fatwa. The reason he's producing the play, the head of Islam like put a fatwa on Larry himself. And so he made like a producer style joke version of that. And F. Murray's like the acting coach there. And he's in one scene, and when he shows up, it's like, hey, Murray, what's going on? And Murray just keeps remarking on how Larry wore those clothes yesterday. And he's like, whoa, like, why you judge it? He's like, they're clean. He's like, I just, I didn't have a lot of time. He's like, I assume they're clean. And it's just them going back and forth, be like, are you like outfit watching the producer of this show? He's like, I would never do that. He's like, then why did you comment at all on that? He's like, I'm just observing that you're wearing the same clothes that you wore yesterday.
Complete Curb Your Enthusiasm, like scene
Exactly.
right there. Just complete nonsense.
Yeah.
He plays an acting coach, whatever that's worth.
Yeah, he's a funny comedic actor. I mean,
Yes.
you have him in all these serious roles, but he has very good comedic timing.
Especially later, like as he gets older, he sharpens his humor sword in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're going to talk about Mythic Quest here in a minute, but he is fucking on a different level of entertaining in Mythic Quest. But we'll get to that. 2018, another Wes Anderson film. He plays Jupiter in Isle of Dogs.
It's a great movie.
I know Warren loved that movie. I never actually watched it, but he absolutely loved it.
Mm-hmm. During this time, he's just doing a bunch of voice acting, right? So he does Isle of Dogs, then he does How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World. He plays Grimmel, an actual baddie, the villain in that one. The How to Train Your Dragon films are really good. I always enjoyed those.
Yeah.
So I know he got to go back into his bag of playing a baddie there.
We have done those for Zooming the Movies, or at least a couple of them. And yeah, they're always a hoot. For some reason, I always get cast as the Craig Ferguson part, the guy who has all of the prosthetic arms and stuff. But to get into the accent, I just sit there and watch old clips of Craig Ferguson's late night show, which is just the greatest thing ever.
It's on another level of absurdity, for sure. Another voice role in Lady and the Tramp, the live action version. He played Tony. And then another big show, Mythic Quest, Apple TV Plus. He's in 19 episodes of that show between 2020 and 2021. So let's talk a little bit about his role, and then we can talk about the controversy tied to why he got fired from the show. So let's talk about his role first. C.W. Longbottom. the writer on the show, the one focused on creating the stories, the prose.
I think this show is very funny. I think he's very funny. I think Rob McElhenney's hilarious.
Ian.
Yeah, it took me a minute to kind of, because I'm only used to Mac from Always Sunny, so it took me a minute to like adjust what was going on here. But as someone who loves video games, I always assume that the people who become filthy rich off of video games are quirky weirdos like this, where it's like, hey, I'm worth tens of millions of dollars because I came up with this idea. And
Blood Ocean.
Right. Like now I think I'm a, Silicon Valley icon or, tycoon. And really everyone's like, yeah, you're just a weird dude, man. But like, yeah, this game's a classic, It's like everyone loves this game, but you're just an odd duck. And so I did find the humor in this very good.
I mean, you saw Grandma's Boy. You know what video game culture is like. Come on, James.
Right, of course. That's the only way that keeps getting brought up as examples is because it has to be based on some truth, right? Like, there's got to be like, I met the guy who came up with Grand Theft Auto, and yeah, it's made billions of dollars, but man, is he a strange cat? Let me tell you. I was like, yeah, I would assume as much.
Yeah, his character is just obsessed with the written word and being able to tell these like beautiful poetic stories. He's really creating the character arcs behind the scenes. And I think the funniest bits on there is the one where they convince him that they brought in a robot to be able to basically do what ChatGPT does now to write stories, and he like literally loses all sense of his identity at that moment in time. And I remember he comes in and he's just like, his character completely changes because he's like, well, I've accepted mediocrity as my new normal. I'm going to give the people what they want. They want popular, not good. He's like hip and trendy. He's funny as hell in that role. But I know he got in some trouble on set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
While at Mythic Quest. He was fired from the show for 2 different complaints about sexual harassment. My understanding is he was telling some not so great jokes. But that, I don't know what you guys parsed from what you could find.
He came out and said, I made jokes I now know were inappropriate, and I regret it. And because of it, there are some wonderful people and a wonderful show I'm no longer a part of, or I no longer get to work with. And for them not to counter with being like, hey, that's not actually what happened, this is what happened, makes me think there's probably some truth to it.
Yeah.
For both sides to say, yeah, we're going our separate ways. Yeah, probably did say something that was inappropriate, and probably multiple times. And I think that's a reason why people get fired. And I think it's a deserved reason why people get fired. I don't think I will lump him in with the likes of other people who have had
Kevin Spacey.
Well, I would never lump someone in just casually with Kevin Spacey. But, it comes across a lot like, to me, how I would expect someone from that generation to not be able to fit in with the times, where it's like, wait, we're not allowed to say racist jokes, we're not allowed to say sexist jokes. Be like, you're allowed to say it once, and I'm going to check you, and if you ever say it again, I'm going to write you up. And if you do that 4 or 5 times, people will be like, we got to get this guy the fuck out of here, man. And that's what happened.
I'm pretty much in line with what you said, and I think he acknowledges that he was at fault, that he did do something that was inappropriate. And that there were consequences, and he owned the consequences for it. And he's not like, this is a witch hunt. It's, woke culture coming to get me
right
canceled. Like, he didn't pull any of that crap. And I was just like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's exactly like you said. He is an older guy. He probably was making repeated inappropriate jokes, like many of our older family members probably do.
Mm-hmm.
That has consequences in today's day and age.
I agree.
And I was just like, man, like, I hate PR speak and all the marketing stuff. And like, you can read it pretty much anytime something like this happens with like a sports personality, it's probably PR speak. But this was one of those things where you're like, oh, like, this seems pretty genuine to me. So,
like, if one of my friends told me that, I was like, oh, dude, I got fired. I'd be like, oh, what happens? Like, well, I kept making sex jokes. Be like, well, what the fuck do you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
It's like, it's way different when you're younger than when you're in your mid 80s, when you're like, Grandpa, knock it the fuck off. You're going to get fired. It's like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, it is a big deal. Like, you got to come back to reality for a second.
Well, I mean, he's entering this like heyday of TV work late in his career and into his 80s, where he comes off Mythic Quest and then he goes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's in a TV show on Disney Plus. But Moon Knight, alongside Oscar Isaac again, the voice of Khonshu, and he got a Primetime Emmy nom for that role in that show. And if they continue with Moon Knight, he'll be back.
It's a great show. I honestly did not realize that he was Khonshu until I started researching for this episode. So again, it's one of those things where dude's a great voice actor. He's got a great voice, and he not only can he emote with it, but he can make it work for him in very different ways. I was like, dang, that's F. Murray Abraham. That's cool because it does. I mean, that's a great part. Yeah,
and you as a voice actor, I mean, I feel like that voice role has a lot. It's got a lot of range to it.
It does.
I feel like it's not a very stagnant voice role. He's going up and down the ladder there.
It's not like I was saying playing Hulk, where it's when I go Hulk mode, it's basically be angry, growl a lot, just be you. And it's when you're playing this giant, it's a bird. Is that what his skull is? So it's when he's playing that part, it's there's emotion behind it. He's not just this big towering figure.
Mm-hmm.
He's truly a character. Oh, you hear softness and kind of a human nature in that voice, and it's kind of different.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting they even cast him, because Marvel, they like to keep these people around for a long time, and the dude's in his 80s, and they casted his voice, so it says some confidence in either his lifestyle or his ability to do the job. I don't know. And then the big show that James mentioned earlier, White Lotus, season 2, he's in those 7 episodes, another Primetime Emmy nom and a Golden Globe nom and a SAG win as well for his role in that show. Great show. Really fun season. I think I mentioned in the group chat, in a season full of pretty awful people, he's one of the most unscathed, even though he certainly has some problematic attitudes towards women. He's very misogynistic. I feel has there's a wisdom to him, and maybe it's just the bar is really low because everybody else for the most part is a terrible human, but he is one of the better humans by the time the season's over.
I think the White Lotus is such an interesting concept, and I like that it can go on forever. For people who haven't watched the show, the premise of each season is episode 1 in the first opening scene, they let you know that someone has died at this hotel. And then they go back and it's hey, a week earlier, and they introduce an ensemble cast of characters, and you don't know who the person is who died, but someone dies. And so you get to watch the story unfold that is inevitably going to end in a death. And they make it a drama comedy. There are very funny scenes, but it's definitely dramatically driven. Season 1 takes place in Hawaii, and season 2 takes place in Italy, and he's in season 2. I loved both seasons. I'm excited for season 3. They are announcing cast members. I'm going to be more pumped. But I will agree with you, Kyle. He nails the charming, overly flirtatious, and then somewhat misogynistic Italian grandfather. He thinks he's being just polite, and he's definitely kind of stepping 1 or 2 steps over the boundaries when it comes to talking to women. And it's done with a innocence where you're oh, that's fine. But it's because he's an old man, and you're if he was a younger man, this would be a little threatening. But yeah, I think he's great in the role. I will also say I came to the realization that my daughter, Deborah Winger Jr., her favorite song is actually the theme song to season 2 of this show, which is incredible. It's an absolute banger. She loves it so much that she has a hand gesture to request it, and it's my number 1 played song on Spotify, is the season 2 theme song to White Lotus. And so when I was holy shit, this guy's got a special place in my pop culture heart. After watching this, so season 1 and season 2, and then watching Grand Budapest Hotel, it clicked. I was I realized that I love an eccentric, bisexual concierge in almost every movie or pop culture show I can think of. Both seasons of White Lotus, the concierge is incredibly fascinating. Grand Budapest Hotel, incredibly fascinating. And then the only other one I could think of is Tim Curry in Home Alone 2. And I'm like, he's amazing. Like, so these are 4 eccentric bisexual concierges, and every time I'm like, damn, that is just a funny character trope, and it's 100% success with me.
I looked up movies with this eccentric concierge, and the only thing that came up was Grand Budapest Hotel. So you're spot on.
Season 1 of White Lotus, Armand is unbelievable as a character. He's the concierge. And in season 2, the concierge the whole time is like trying to hold it together and clearly falling apart at the seams. And I was like, I very much enjoyed this unique trope.
It's just excellent, and Mike White is a genius for everything he's doing with that show. So
Remember, Mike White's also the writer of School of Rock, if anyone's wondering. It's one of the best movies ever.
the original Ned Schneebly.
That's right.
He was also on Survivor for a season.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That. Look at this. Look at Mike White fan club over here.
Someone was like, what do I know you from?
He was also a quarterback for the Jets for a spell there. So
Actually, I was like, no, he was. Like in a show or a movie? And I was like, oh, the name. Yeah, he was. You're right.
sorry. And then the last one we'll mention was another recent TV show, Netflix, Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities series of anthology horror type shows. And he's in the episode called The Autopsy, which is like an alien autopsy concept that I watched on a plane and I was super fascinated by. And he plays the guy conducting the autopsy and ends up thwarting the alien in a really interesting and unpredictable way that I did not see coming.
I'm glad I ended up watching this because I love, like, you know, American Horror Stories and like Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix. These whole like little like horror sci-fi anthology series. I'm just like, I get really into them. I am super glad I watched this because yeah, it's basically like him and the sheriff, and then there's a couple other people, but like he is the character really for most of the story, and he does a phenomenal job. But the story itself is just really cool. I actually asked folks at work like if they'd watch this, and there were several people who were like, "Oh yeah, like that's the best episode." That
Really?
so good. Oh yeah.
Oh, I gotta check it out now.
I had 2 different people tell me that was their favorite episode. Although the first one is pretty good because I had people tell me that one too, so I had to go back and watch it.
Okay. Looking at the individual episode ratings, it is by far the highest rated one. It's 7.9, and the other ones are 6.6, 6.7, 6.2, 6.4, 5.6, 6.2, and 6.6. It is easily the highest rated episode.
That makes sense.
It's just a really cool concept, James. You'll enjoy it. It's episode 3.
Yeah, when you said Love, Death, and Robots, I was like, oh, I actually really like that show. And so you sold me on it pretty quickly.
In that case, I won't talk about it anymore because I don't want to spoil it for you, James. I want you to have that experience.
This one's only a few years old as opposed to Scarface.
That's good. We'll give you a little bit more leeway on that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to get us to the mountaintop. 133 credits or something like that later. Case, what do we got for top performances?
All right. Well, we got a list tonight titled Top F. Murray Abraham Movies, straight from movieweb.com.
Movies.
And according to this site, from his early roles and career beginnings to his current performances and success as an actor, here are F. Murray Abraham's best movies ranked. And it came out December of 2022.
Okay.
And I will say we discussed or reviewed at length 5 of them, briefly discussed 3, and there's 2 we didn't talk about.
I like that.
And it appears to be ranked.
Okay.
Mm.
All right. I'll go with the obvious one. Give me Scarface. It's probably not number 1. It's probably like 4 or 5, but I feel Scarface is on there.
Scarface is number 1.
He is number 1. Damn. Okay. Number 1.
I was gonna say I would have thought Amadeus would have been number 1.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Mike, is that your guess?
Yes.
Amadeus is number 2.
Oh, well, we got to go in order. James, come on now.
Oh, come on. You guys took the 2 easy ones.
I mean, Star Trek's there.
We are not going to go in order. I'll tell you that right now.
No. Grand Budapest Hotel.
Grand Budapest Hotel is number 7.
Okay.
Give me Star Trek Insurrection.
Star Trek Insurrection is number 9.
Nice. I'm going to go with Finding Forrester.
Finding Forrester is not on the list.
Oh,
Whoa! Oh,
first failure.
And I will say there's at least 2 of them on here that I'm like, wait, what? If Finding Forrester's not. So
Inside Llewyn Davis.
yeah.
Inside Llewyn Davis is number 8.
That's too low.
I know.
Agreed. I agree.
Oh, now I'm like second guessing some of my. If it's best movies, then I'm gonna go with Isle of Dogs.
Isle of Dogs is not on the list.
If we're going with best movies and he's got smaller parts, I will go with an obscure one here. All the President's Men.
Yep.
All the President's Men, number 5.
Yes.
Good call. Good call.
Last Action Hero.
Last Action Hero is not on the list.
Ooh.
Ugh.
So we're currently looking for number 3, number 4, number 6, and number 10.
Number 3?
2 of them we did not talk about. One of them we reviewed, and the other one we mentioned briefly.
One of them we reviewed, like we did a full review on.
Uh-huh.
So it's not Perestroika. So is it James? Is it Joshua?
There's no way.
Tell me, is it Joshua?
Joshua is number 10.
Oh,
It's on there. I mean, he's good in the role, but the movie's not that great. But whatever.
Yeah. The acting is not bad in that movie.
Okay. All right.
According to MovieWeb, Joshua was considered a failure at the box office, total earnings and low budget production, but received mixed reviews from critics and a 77% audience score. So they're staying by their list.
Stand by your man.
13 Ghosts. I'll go.
Yeah, I was going to say that was going to be my guess as well.
I doubt it.
13 Ghosts is not on the list.
I'm going to go Mighty Aphrodite.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, yeah, that's a good guy.
Mighty Aphrodite is not on the list.
Oh. A good rate.
2 out of the 3 we did not talk about.
Is it Mimic?
Mimic is not on the list.
Of course it's not. What kind of question was
How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah, that might be the best next best option.
How to Train Your Dragon is not on the list. The movies we missed. Number 3, featuring Sean Connery in a wild hairdo, Name of the Rose.
What?
That movie's so fucking boring, dude. It's unbelievably boring.
Number 4 is The Big Fix.
Oh, yeah, with Richard Dreyfuss.
And then number 6, Goltzius and the Pelican Company.
I don't know that one.
You could have just made that up for all I know.
I was going to say, that sounds like an AI.
A late 16th century Dutch printer and engraver of erotic prints seduces the Margrave of Alsace into paying for a printing press to make and publish illustrated books. And you can find it nowhere. It's not streaming anywhere. You can't even get it on Amazon.
It's a crafty Dutch man swindling people out of their money. It just sounds like Goldmember. So
Oh.
The list is just like, trust us on this. We know you can't watch this movie ever, but you got to trust us on this one.
I believe they're leaning towards this because the director got the Best European Director nomination and Best Motion Picture at the Catalan International Film Fest.
Horse shit.
Yeah, I don't love this list. I will say I was able to find a total of 1 list.
I think if I was going to give a top 3, it would be a 1 movie, 2 shows. For me, it would be Amadeus, White Lotus, and probably Mythic Quest are my 3 favorite characters that he does. But that's me.
I think you might be right there. Hold on.
If we're sticking to movies, I would stay with Scarface and Amadeus 1 and 2, and I would be Inside Llewyn Davis for number 3.
I like Grand Budapest as well. The narrator role he does well.
yeah, I was going to say, since I have not seen Mythic Quest yet, I was just going to swap that out for
Grand Budapest.
Grand Budapest. And for me, it's Amadeus, Grand Budapest, and then White Lotus is just classic. So
All right, let's get into the Munson Meter. What we do, we rate every actor on a scale of 0 to 100 based on a variety of factors that could include anything from longevity, project choice, pop culture impact, acting range, awards footprint, any other talents they might have, personal life, comedic chops, box office success, or anything else that matters to us as Munsons. So we're going to start this time with Case.
Well, for starters, I really dig the fact that he has the name F. Murray Abraham. That is a name format that is seldomly pulled off in Hollywood. The only other one I can think of is C. Thomas Howell. I really appreciate a lot of the things that he's really good at. I think the downside of the Oscar curse hurt him a lot because I think he is passionate about acting. I think he's an actor's actor. I think he takes the craft very seriously. And the downside, though, is he missed a lot of opportunities. I think he misplayed his hand, and it hurt his career quite a bit. He's got an iconic voice. I think he's great at voice roles. I think he's great at narrating. He has the ability to carry a scene with tension and suspense. And when he's in those roles, few are better than him. I mean, like I said, I love him in Homeland more than anything he's done. That being said, the list of great movies he's been in is really limited. His box office struggles. I think Mike brought it up earlier. Project selection was not a priority for him. And when you're starting to compile a list of almost 100 actors at this point, and some of our better ones have great project selection, it's tough to have that not hurt him. So I will say I came in with a score, and normally my score rises or lowers based on the conversations we had. And tonight it didn't move. I think that's a pretty accurate score for me, and I'm going to give him a 60.
To kind of echo Case, he certainly made some role choices after his Oscar that hurt his career. Of course, hindsight's 2020. It's easy for us to judge him later and for him to criticize himself, but it is what it is, right? It kind of led to the next 10 years being pretty rough for him for anything that would give him notoriety or a leg up. But I will say, in terms of some of the positives, he can play an absolutely infuriating character on screen. He has obviously a great voiceover voice, and he's a presence. I think to what Mike said earlier, he has a presence of him when he gets onto the screen. Like he can be very stoic, and he can communicate a lot with his facial expressions without saying much, and that's something that not every actor can do well. I'm always going to give a couple points to any actors who did a lot in the stage world. Not that he got any critical acclaim for doing the stage work, but said, my acting is my salvation. You can tell this guy loves what he does. He loves the art, the craft of it, and he just loves the process of acting. He complained about his role on Grand Budapest because he was only there for a week, and he just wanted to be around the other actors, right? He just wanted to be on set, interact with them, and see them do their work. He's an actor's actor. He loves the process. And I like anybody who's nerdy about their craft. The allegations with Mythic Quest make him tough to score, right? How do you kind of account for that? But I will say it's cool to see him have a pretty late career resurgence into his 70s and 80s and find all these really cool roles that actually use his talents and maybe had been dormant for a long time. But the one thing I thought about, and Mike brought it up earlier, of he shines comparatively to his peers when in every movie he's in, he kind of stands out. And normally I say that as a compliment, but I think in his case, a lot of times he's acting with people that aren't very good at acting because he's taken on really bad projects. And so of course he's going to look good. It's like taking somebody who used to pitch in the major leagues at 42 and putting them in a men's league, right? And they're going to look incredible comparatively to me because I used to seeing guys so high 70s. And some dude comes in throwing low 90s, which isn't good enough to compete with the big boys, but still is going to wipe the floor with anybody else, right? When he's in Joshua with some of the lower level actors, of course he's going to stand out. It's a product of who you're comparing him to. So that was kind of the reflection I made during our conversation. So with all that, I'm right around the same place that Case is at. I think a pretty fair score. I'm going to give him a 62, which is 2 higher than Gabe Byrne in the Burnaholics. All right, Mike, our guest Munson.
I think you guys have kind of nailed a lot of this good stuff. So his first career breakout role was, Scarface, and he was 45, I think, when that happened. So that's, a little bit later start, kind of like one of my favorite actors, Alan Rickman.
Mm-hmm.
Like you guys said, he popped on the scene, kind of backed off because of the Oscar situation and some choices that he made that weren't great. So yeah, all really good points. I think for me, things that I give him a bonus on, I still think he makes a big impact in a lot of the stuff he does. Kyle makes a very good point. I think, Perestroika is a great film for that right there, where you're like, yeah, no one else in this movie. I will say this, Ali Sheedy was actually pretty good. But other than them, there's really no one else in that movie who's even going to come close to being in the same league as him. And as someone who used to work at James Madison, where we have a couple of former athletes who play in the WNBA, I've played pickup basketball with some of them, and WNBA players can absolutely wipe the floor with just about anybody.
Yeah.
So unless you're playing in the NBA, they can wipe the floor with you. So Kyle, I think, made a really good point there. That he's not surrounded by the greatest crowd. He does usually shine, so I give him credit for that. One of the other things I want to give him some bonus points for, besides his voice acting work, which I think that's a bias, but at the same time I'm going to give him a bonus point for it. The other thing I'm giving him a bonus point for is, I haven't mentioned it yet for his upcoming work, but the man is 84, and he's about to do a 6-week musical run as a principal player, a main role.
Damn.
On Broadway. So doing that at 34 makes me hurt. Doing that at 84 is mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
So to Kyle's point earlier about Marvel liking people to be around, I think that he has some sort of Italian Syrian gene, fountain of youth built within him that I think he's got a lot left in the tank, and I'm kind of excited to see that from an 84-year-old. I kind of do what Case does. I come in, I either kind of bump or lower. I give him some bonus points, and so with the bonus points, he ended up being at 64.
James, round us out.
My F. Murray Abraham viewing experience was unique in that name recognition almost non-existent in my world. And then when I looked him up and I was like, oh, I love White Lotus. And then I looked up other movies and I was like, oh, I've actually never watched these. Let me check these out. I thought he was great in every role I saw him in. And some of the movies did suck. And I still thought he nailed it. And I think he's a great actor. And I was pleasantly surprised. It was very similar in my experience to Deborah Winger, where it was someone I had never really watched before. And then when I was kind of consuming their performances, I was like, I think I would have loved this person if they were at their heyday when I was alive, right? It was in the 80s and it was in the early 80s. And so rewatching some of his stuff, I was blown away. Name recognition, like I said, not there, but I think the range is there. I think he's funny. I think he's great as a scary, dominating figure. I think he's great as a dramatic figure, a sympathetic figure. I was just incredibly impressed. One thing I did find very fascinating is he joins Liam Neeson as one of the few actors I've seen play multiple ethnicities and nationalities, and you just accept it immediately because you can't really place his accent. And you're like, oh, I guess that's what people from Eastern Europe sound like, or the Middle East or Cuba. I don't know. I guess he's tan. He might be Italian. Syrian? I don't fucking know. Because in every movie I was watching, it's like, where's this character supposed to be from? And then I actually had to look up Grand Budapest Hotel, and it was a made-up Middle Eastern country. I was like, all right, cool, because I could not follow what was happening, where he was from. And then I was like, oh, he's played Cuban and Italian and the Middle East. And
good point.
Right. It's like, it's because you can't really place the accent. You can't really place the skin tone. And I found it very funny. And now after listening to everyone, I realize I am way, way higher on him than you guys are. But I only knocked my point down 1 in my career rating after our talk. And so I'm actually going to give him a 77.
Ooh.
Wow.
All right. That kicks him up 10 spots, James, just alone on that. So that's going to give F. Murray Abraham a 65.75, which puts him in 70th place. So he's out kicking the coverage with his box office score, and that puts him between Gary Cole and Matt Dillon.
Oh, what a strange...
Yeah, unique.
Gary Cole, I get...
It vibes like that. Matt Dillon's weird, but
yeah,
Gary Cole and him together vibe. That makes sense to me.
Seymour Cassell's right there too. Edgar Ramirez is there. Daryl Hannah. So you see, I think a lot of similar career arcs there.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle's conveniently skipping one, which is Seth Green is also right there.
I'll put him in the same bag.
You know, character actors like Gary Cole, F. Murray Abrahams, Seth Green.
Mike, what's he got coming?
Yeah, so he's got a couple things coming up. Only one screen thing. It's a movie called Milorepa, I believe is how you say it. It's him and Harvey Keitel and a bunch of Italian actors, but it's an American movie. Apparently the gist of it is that it's the post-apocalyptic future. There's no such thing as technology anymore. We've all basically gone back to living amongst the trees. There's a girl that her family is murdered and she has to disguise herself and kill the leaders of whatever their little tribe is to get revenge from her family. I have no idea who he plays, but I'm assuming him and Harvey Keitel are probably some of the leaders of this troop, but I got no idea because there's not really a lot of information on it.
I don't think he's worked with him since Bridge of San Luis Rey, so we'll see where this goes.
I mean, it's a cool pairing. Harvey Keitel, you talk about a great older character actor.
Mm-hmm.
There's one right there. The other thing that I did mention is he is starring opposite Kristen Chenoweth for a 6-week run. I think it's on Broadway or just off Broadway of a new musical called The Queen of Versailles, which is about Jackie and David Siegel, real estate timeshare mogul family. It's called Versailles. It's like the largest mansion in the country, and it's in Florida. And they built it right when the economy was crashing in 2008. There was a documentary by that name, and I think a book that got put out, and now they're turning it into a musical. And he is playing David Siegel, the husband, opposite Kristen Chenoweth. So, like I said, doing a 6-week
interesting,
live musical run at 84 years old as one of the two main characters, that is incredibly impressive from my viewpoint. So,
Totally agree.
That's what he's got coming up. And that's this summer, it looks like, in New York City. So,
in July, it looks like.
New York City.
New York City. Next episode 99, is going to drop on April 11th and is going to feature Jay Ledbetter, who was with us for the Holly Hunter and Dan Hedaya episodes. Jay from Atlanta, I always like to say he's the most handsome man in podcasting these days. Used to be with In Session Film and has kind of went off and done some different things, so it'd be good to catch up with him. The Wheel selected somebody of these 5, which are Alan Tudyk, Kristen Wiig, Linda Hamilton, Will Ferrell, and Thomas Lennon. What do we like or dislike about that list?
That's a funny list.
Yeah, a lot of good comedic actors. I think ideally Will Ferrell, because he was the comedic actor during my formative years, but I would be comfortable with any of the people listed.
Will Ferrell would be hilarious because Aubrey is not a fan of Will Ferrell's comedy, and he's made that very clear. So that would be interesting.
Step Brothers is on my Mount Rushmore of comedies, so if he has any bad words to say about that, we're gonna have some problems.
For me, it's as a guy with a broadcasting degree, I will absolutely tell you that if you get your way through journalism school and don't watch Anchorman, there is something messed up with you, because it's the greatest movie about news that has ever been made.
Unique New York.
You were a dirty pirate hooker.
Taking a break from our pledge drive to kick some ass. Tim Robbins. I love that whole scene.
Well, we have mentioned it many times over the years with other actors we've covered. For sure.
I was going to say, this is an absolutely stacked wheel. Will Ferrell obviously is a big one. Kristen Wiig's a big one. Alan Tudyk is one of my, character actors that...
He's awesome.
You can't not love. The guy is the greatest.
He's funny.
I mean, we get to watch Tucker and Dale versus Evil, one of my favorite horror comedies.
It's a good one.
You get all kinds of stuff. You get
Knight's Tale.
A Knight's Tale. Yeah, you get Hey, so you get Moana and a bunch of Pixar stuff. There is that man.
Star Wars.
That man is you look up range in the dictionary and it's just Alan Tudyk.
He's a big voice actor. I didn't realize how much of a voice actor he was.
Yeah, he's one of the greats. You can't see the name and just not say it. But I think you guys really need to. It's time for some new boot goofing.
I'm just goofing. I'm just new boot goofing.
It's new boot goofing.
Thomas Lennon's hilarious. Yes.
He's one of those people that, obviously Reno 911, I think, was my first experience with a lot of people.
Classic.
For him. But oh my God, he's one of those people, he pops up in things and you're just like, This dude is hilarious. He's just so good.
Mm-hmm.
I Love You Man when he makes out with Andy Samberg. Or not Andy Samberg, Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd, yep.
Yeah.
Night at the Museum.
Oh, yeah.
If we're wanting some other iconic roles, I think obviously Linda Hamilton, the Terminator, and then also being married for a short time to James Cameron would be interesting. But personally, I think Kristen Wiig would be great because I think she has a sneaky, massive range as an actress.
Mm-hmm. Skeleton Twin, she's phenomenal with Bill Hader in that movie.
Yeah, she's great.
Very, very good. Extremely funny. I mean, we got a 40% chance of watching a lot of SNL with her and Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of SNL with both of those two.
If we get Linda Hamilton, I want to spend a full hour discussing both Terminator movies.
We finally get to review Dante's Peak. I don't think we've talked about Dante's Peak.
Well, we don't need to. Yeah, we don't need to.
Is that the one where the grandma
Yes.
gets her legs burnt off by lava?
Yes.
Case not a big fan of that disaster film. Yeah, they're
Good movie. Anytime you could set grandma's feet on fire, you got to do it.
So here's the question. Who would Jay Ledbetter pick based on he did Holly Hunter, Dan Hedaya previously?
Well, as you guys were chatting, I was doing some geography, and none of them are close to Georgia, so I don't know.
Can't parse anything from that. Remember, he was also supposed to be with us for Michael Caine and had to back out last minute, so I don't know if that helps.
Oh,
That does not help because all I could be was like, I don't know, big in the 80s, maybe Linda Hamilton, but they're such drastically different actors. Like, it doesn't really narrow anything down.
Final guess.
I'm going to say I think the most iconic one on our list is probably Will Ferrell. That's who I think he picked.
Yeah, we're close in age. That's my guess as well.
Okay. Mike, who would you pick if you could do back-to-backs?
Oh, if you're letting me pick, I'm picking Alan Tudyk every day.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, given his voice acting background. Well, you don't pick.
Yeah.
Jay doesn't pick. I don't pick. Contrary to popular belief, the wheel decides, and we'll see what happens. All right, Mike, we've reached the end, my friend. You know how this goes. We love having you here. You're always a ton of fun. Red carpet moment, right? Anything you want to plug or any wise words from our audience? The floor is yours, my friend.
I'll just say, go check out our group on Facebook, Scripts and Friends. I think we will have finished Iron Man 2, which I said is going on right now as we're recording. But I think after this comes out, we will have Thor, and then Captain America, the First Avenger, and then the Avengers to end out phase 1, and then we'll start working on phase 2. So if you want to see some people really ham it up and have some good times doing Marvel movies, and support live theater, support live shows, and go out and buy tickets and do that kind of stuff, because that's really important to us, and that's good stuff, and that helps a lot of our friends, and it's a good way to support your community.
Mike, we've got a lot of guests that have really cool creative projects, and I think yours is one of the more interesting ones. I think that's really cool what y'all do.
It's really fun. It's it's community theater, but it's online. So
keep rocking, dude.
Love having you, man.
Yeah, dude.
Thanks, man. I love coming around. So it's always fun. You guys are a great group, and this is a great format, and I love talking about all this stuff. So.
All right. Well, as we wrap things up, you can find us on the X at Munsons at Movies. You can find us on Instagram, Munsons at the Movies. You can email us, munsonsatthemovies@gmail.com. Any final thoughts from F. Murray Abraham?
Fuck you. You need to open your eyes and keep your mouth shut. I'm doing the talking here, not you. I'm sorry about this, Mr. Sosa.
Munsons out.
All right, let's go. Thank you for the education, gentlemen. We've just received a PhD in stupidity. Doctor, shall we?
Now, I shouldn't be telling y'all this because I could lose my federale hood.
Your what?
My federale hood! Look, I had to throw you guys off, okay? I was doing it for my country. The red, the white, and the green.